and for those of you who are new over here, this is me Yamini and you are watching Procrastinate with Books. Now I know it's been a very long time catching up with you guys, but I have come with a ton of updates with all the books that I have read recently. So without any further ado, let's swipe in. The first book that I have for you guys is the Blackout book club, which is by Amy Green. Now this is a historical fiction which is set up in the background stories of people who were left behind, who did not actually go to the war, which are basically women, and what are the different challenges that they face during their time. And for an amusement or the daily routine breakage, one of them decides to host a book club in to save the library, and that's how the story proceeds. Now the book actually hits you in the face by showing different facets of a society. On one hand, it shows how people would actually destroy everything and anything that others, especially women, hold dear, and on the other hand, it also showcases you the story of togetherness, where people come in together to help each other come out of the different scenarios that they are facing in real life challenges, be it a non-supporting husband or different children, how to support a livelihood, etc. But the way the author actually showcases books as a complete distraction to get away from the real life disturbances is really commendable. So for people who are actually looking for certain distractions or an out of the ordinary read at this point of time, I think this would be a great fit for you, and also for people who enjoy books about books, because this book is basically set up around a library and hosting a different book club in times of dire needs. This would be a good recommendation for you guys. The next book that I have for you guys is The Girl by Witherkeigh. Now think about deal with the devil, death in the shadows, shadows lurking behind the scenes. This whole concept may have a very number of different names, but I can promise you that the story that you are about to read is pretty unique. Now, despised by her whole family for being what she is or who she is, basically, she has a horrible childhood, and though she has all the basic amenities of food, clothing, shelter, and even school, there isn't an ounce of love or affection or any family, friends who really take care about her. Now, quick few things that I wanted to call out about this book was that the first 20% of the book has a lot of incidents which are mentioned around physical abuse, and it also made me rethink whether or how basically I should proceed ahead, but later on it got a little better. It's surprising to see that it also has a lot of aspects of literature popping in here and there, be it the tone of the characters or even the overall plot. I think the book was humorous. Now I say humorous because it has a funny little combination of horror and gothic aspects combining with the contemporary world around which the book is actually built in. And I would like to explain this with a proper example for you guys. So there is this chapter where the book is discussing the devilish traits. Basically the aunts are sitting on the table discussing the devilish traits of the girl, how she's behaving and everything in the school, the overall process. And immediately after there is this discussion of the IKEA table that's laying around there, and it's like very funny to actually visualize that you are discussing devilish topics and then you are immediately jumping upon an IKEA table. Funny things aside, overall a decent engaging read for me, but the good part is that I've got hints there is a next part coming out for this book in 2023 and I'm very excited to read that. On number 3, we have the Astonishing Chronicles of Oscar from Elsewhere by Jaclyn Moriarty. Now, if I tell you that some books are explained better when spoken in words rather than the whole sentences, this would be one of them. So you can think about magic, elves, and even witches coming together for an adventurous election of the next elvish leader. That's how this book is basically about. Now, honestly, if you guys are having a very busy schedule recently or your life is keeping you on your toes all the time, I think this would be a great time to pick this book up, because it's like a short power nap for you, which basically regenerates the inner child in yourself. Now the character of Oscar shown in this book is quite an average small child living in the contemporary world that we are currently living in. Now that contemporary world basically intertwines with the world of elves and witches, which basically makes this a worthwhile read. And the best part for me was the transportation from one magical world to the normal world gave me Harry Potter vibes, just like how they used to transport from the normal ordinary Muggle world into the wizard world by going to the platform 9 and 3/4. There is something similar kind of an element over here which makes it a very sweet read for me. The next book that I have for you guys is The Vanishing of Margaret Small by Neil Alexander. Now this book is though listed as a literary fiction, but it felt no less than that for a memoir for me. The scenarios mentioned in this book particularly are so true to its core around people with disabilities and how they are basically treated in the real world. It's actually shocking to its core. Now, obviously, not all books can be reviewed in the same manner. So, here are a few points that I actually jotted down for this book. The things that you will basically love in this book are the dual timelines. Margaret's character that has been developed, it's very homely, sweet, but also very determined, which makes me love her all the more. And then there are a plethora of other characters as well whom you can basically love, hate, befriend. There is one for each category for you to enjoy. And this is one of those books that feels like fiction but may actually be inspired from a reality. And then there's also an element of a mischievous gift sender, which makes it very interesting to read. Favorite part about this book is that anyone and everybody can read this book. It's not falling under a specific category, so it's a great pick for anyone. Basically a tale of how a woman is forced into disappearing herself and her character by the society. Next up on the rack we have The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. Now, quick disclaimer, free magical transportation facilities are available while reading this book. The book actually starts off when a person is driving back to his old house and he rediscovers one of the turns that takes him to the end of the lane, and there was a house over there where one of her childhood friends used to live. So he takes a turn, goes to that house, and things starts unwinding over there, and he starts remembering different areas, facets in terms of memories, fake realities and other things. Things are basically intertwined between reality and imagination, and you can't really discriminate the two from each other. Now, at the back of the house, there's a lake, but it's not really a lake. The girl living in the house calls it an ocean, and it's actually a magical ocean filled with all possible elements of fantasy that you can recall. Neil Gaiman has actually put them all in there, and it's a little confusing but very fascinating for you to enjoy. And I would not say anything more than this about the story. I would recommend you to read the blurb. It wasn't much helpful for me, but you may give that a try. I do actually enjoy books that give you some novel concepts introduced into it. For example, how this book introduced different levels of fantasy elements that did not already exist among the overall fantasy genre. You know, the typical kind of broken realm, forgotten kingdoms, people fighting for the throne, treachery, and blah 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 blah. Those kinds of things are not there over here. This is a very different kind of a fantasy element that has been introduced to me, and the new aspects with not a lot of repetition that exist in this one basically made this a fantastic read for me. It was accomplished with flying colors, I would say. Now, considering that it's winters already and this book has a little bit of a dark theme with horror gothic vibes created into it with the spookiness, I think this would be the right time to pick this up. Next up we have Ghost Music by Andrew. Now, I don't really know where to actually place this book. It has different legs in different categories. It could be a part of the literary fiction. It also had elements of art and culture into it, engrossed with a horror vibe. This book actually deserves an award for its writing style because it is constructed so well. Once you start reading, you will realize that the elements and aspects that are discussed into the story are pretty much simple. It's about a normal life struggle, marriage, passion, about pursuing in one's life and everything. But they are put together in such a beautiful manner that you actually enjoy reading the overall book. Now, there were parts of this book that I found pretty much very relatable with my own real life going on, considering a break in your career or even nagging relationships, introvert personality, and an inner pursuit to get things back on track in your life. And even apart from those things aside, it also talks about different deeper things like one's meaning for life, what are we even living for, what are we trying to achieve by what we are doing, and those deeper thoughts. It actually takes a delve or a dive into it. In simple words, I would describe this book as a symphony of mushrooms and piano. It was honestly a soothing read considering I don't even like mushrooms. I still found this overall story quite sweet. But I do think that this book is very audience specific and it's not really for everyone. People won't be able to relate with a lot of things mentioned in the book unless and until you have actually experienced it yourself firsthand. Next up, we have The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Choksi. Now, this was an ARC read for me and I was so excited to get my hands on this book. So, thank you so much, NetGalley, for that. Forever grateful. And overall, the plot of the book was gorgeously constructed and the tales were around found family, friendships, love, and other relationships. A special mention to all the detailed descriptions of the gigantic palace, mansion, gardens, and secretive place that are there in the book. A peculiar thing about this book that was a big yes, especially for me, was that before introducing any important aspect into the story or a big mystery that was about to be intertwined, a mythological tale related to it would be told to you to link those two together, and then you will be able to correlate them better. Now, some plots in the books were actually expected, but most of them were not. So, there were a lot of twists and turns that you wouldn't be anticipating. And even apart from all these things, there were a lot of topics that I actually thought were good and well for research after reading the book. So, for one example, the catskin story, I had no idea it even existed, and that is coming from a great mythology reader who absolutely freakingly loves reading any kind and every kind of mythology. The story has been said to pick up the best two elements of horror element from the Mexican Gothic and the dreamy enchantments from the Invisible Life of Audie LaRue, which was my 5-star read of last year, and I absolutely loved it. It's a kind of a great marriage between the two. And if I was to speak about the best part of the blurb, I would read it to you like this. Once upon a time, a man believed in fairy tales, married a beautiful woman, mysterious woman, Indigo Maxwell. He was a scholar of myth. She was the heiress to a fortune. They exchanged gifts, stories, and believed they. In exchange for her love, Indigo extracted a promise that her bridegroom would never pry on her past. Obviously, he could not resist the temptation, and what he discovers in the House of Dreams is way beyond our imagination. The next book that I read was What Stays Buried by Suzanne Young. Now, this was a middle grade book with fantasy element into it. Now, it also had some paranormal vibes infused into it with spookiness involving a spirit possessing a body and wandering souls that are anchored to a particular thing in the living world, and there's a difference between the living and the dead world. Now, talking about the story, Callista is soon turning 13 and losing her special powers to speak with the dead. And as if this wasn't already enough, a ghost lady is actually haunting the children around the town and abducting them. And now she also has a little sister. The clock is ticking, and now Callista has to find out the hows, whens, wheres, and whys of the ghost lady and how she basically plans to rescue her little sister from her. So if you want to basically cozy up in your blanket and have some ghostly, uncanny experiences, this is the book for you. Drifting a bit more towards the end, the next book on my shelf is The Poppy World by R.F Kuang. This is part of a trilogy series that the author had, and I think it's one of his debut novels as well. And the work is so great. I am just amazed at how this book turned out, and I don't really have enough words to explain in my vocabulary around the exemplary work that the book has done. I also read The Babel or The Babel by the same author that was launched this year, and also loved that book as well. And the writing style in this book too was absolutely captivating for you, and I really don't need to say much about this book. It's pretty famous on Booksta and even on maybe Book Talk too. But for those of you who don't really know about this book, it's actually based around the Chinese Empire slashed fusion with the various skills of dragon warriors and other earthy elements. Some people also classify this book under dark academia because the setup of the first book starts with people joining a proper school to train themselves and become the right part of warriors, whichever fits their category best, be it strategy, actual fighting. You must be thinking that what am I even blabbering about for minutes and minutes, because I just don't have enough words to express myself in a proper way how awed I am by the story of this book and how it's actually going to be turned out. It has two more books and I'm freaking excited to read them too, but they are so long that I'm not really willing enough to pick them up so frequently. So I will be reading a couple of other books and then getting back to this whole series. Let's just hope I get back to them soon. But about this book, I have not actually reviewed this on my channel yet. I'm still gulping up my energy, and once I have that, I'll be sharing a detailed review around this book. I right now am not in a state to talk about this book. With that, we have made it to the final book in the video, The Witches of Vardo by Any Bergman. Now, this story is actually inspired from the real events of history that took place in an island on the easternmost town of Norway. Now, with the glimpses of actual history running in parallel with the storyline of this book, it will actually take you in a world filled with real atrocities of male dominance. Now, though there is no actual mention of any magic, witchcraft in the book is actually narrated from multiple POVs, showcasing you the most ordinary occurrences that could make into the checklist of being a witch at that particular point of time, naming 16th century or so. To name a few, drinking alcohol, dancing, being sharp-tongued, etc. They were all the qualifications of being witch at that particular point of time. Now, the book was overall quite engaging for me, but I think it lost me somewhere in the middle and towards the end because it tied all the loose ends together. It just got me back together. But it was overall a decent one-time read for me. I also have some personal infuriating thoughts mentioned about this book in my detailed review, so please make sure to check that out as well. And that, my friends, were all the books that I read recently. I hope you had a great time watching this, and if you have stayed put until this point of time, do let me know in the comments down below how you are planning to spend your Christmas days. I'm actually going to visit my old friends and I'm very excited for that. And I'll see you in my next video. Until then, Merry Christmas, keep your coffee strong and your TBRs long, keep reading, keep enjoying. Goodbye.